and I get a nudge, talk about your dad, which I had never talked about publicly. No one knew, other than people very close to me, no one knew anything about that story. And so I, for whatever reason, because I didn't even, wasn't like a follower or anything back then, I obey and I talk about my dad. And so I share the story that I grew up in a very abusive home. And I went for 13 years without talking to my dad. And he had never met his grandsons, who at the time I think were like maybe 10 and 9 or something like that. And I went to see him, and this was at a very bad time in my life. I had lost it all in real estate. This was in 2009. Everything was falling to pieces. I went through a divorce. I was depressed. Like everything was just in shambles. I was $1 million in debt. And I go to this event, and on day 2, I realized that I have repair relationship with dad on a to-do list with no priority. And what happens with to-do lists with no priority is, you lose the opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. So on day 2 of that event, I call my dad, hadn't talked to him in 13 years, we decide I'm going to go up to Indiana and see him. And so I do, and we create a better relationship than we had because we didn't have anything. Never became perfect, still not perfect. But I shared that story. But me coming back after that, I was a different person. It's like I had released something, and that's what actually led me to making millions of dollars with that next company that I was a part of. And so I don't know why, but I share that story in Myrtle Beach, first time ever. The guy that booked me, when I finished, he's walking down the aisle, just tears pouring down his face. It was crazy. And he said, I can't believe you just shared that story. I haven't talked to my dad in 17 years. Tomorrow, I fly out for his funeral.
Whoa.
And I was just like, so like, right? I mean, that's the response. I'm like, it was so like for me, especially back then, as I kind of beat myself up of that, man, I could have talked about this a week ago. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, how come but after like some reflection, I realized one major thing, and it's kind of like what you were saying I used to always show up on stage and I wanted to be perfect and I wanted to be, everything's together here, guys.
Right.
And I realized by me being willing to be vulnerable and share some of the ugly stuff, it gave people hope.